Hi! In this video I want to show you two free vocal processing plugins I made, VocRide and Sibalance. Sibalance is a visual de-esser and a sibilance shaper. VocRide is a pitch-aware harmonic EQ for vocals. They do different things, but the idea behind both of them is similar. Instead of applying static processing to the whole vocal, they react to what is actually happening in the voice. Sibalance listens for sibilance-like moments. VocRide follows the detected pitch and lets you shape the vocal harmonics around the note being sung. So, this is not just a feature list. I want to show you how they behave on real sung vocals and spoken voice. Just a quick note about audio examples. The sung vocals comes from selected Looperman acapellas that are allowed for this kind of use. The spoken examples comes from LibriVox public domain recordings. I wanted to use real voices, but not someone's released track, so we can focus on the actual behavior of the plugins. Also, some of the spoken examples I use a little compression and limiting before my plugins, just to make the details easier to hear in the video. So let's start with Sibalance. Sibalance is a de-esser, but it works a little differently from a typical de-esser. The first version of this idea was something I built in VCB Rack. The logic was very simple. I was listening to two parts of the vocal signal, the lower part and the upper part. If there is no low energy and no high energy, that is silence. If it's both low and high energy, that is actually the voice. But if there is mostly high energy, especially in an unpleasant range, that is probably a sibilant. So then the analyzer decides that this moment is mostly sibilance. The plugin reduces the level of the incoming signal only at that moment. Very simple, no magic. That is one of the reasons why this plugin is free. But there are a few important controls, so let's listen and adjust them. Here is the first vocal without processing.
I'm not your typical addict.
Let's focus on this part.
Typical.
Now I will enable sibilance with the default settings.
I'm not your typical
Already at the beginning of the word typical becomes smoother, the T is less aggressive. But in this example, it's still pretty strong, so I can reduce the sibilance level more, for example down to around -10 dB. Let's compare.
I'm not your typical
Okay, let's continue. There are also many S sounds here.
It's just a powerful substance.
Let's compare.
Powerful subs.
If you feel that the plugin removes too much sibilance in some moments, you can automate the amount.
Powerful subs.
But this is just the normal gain control for the detected sibilance parts, so automation works very naturally. Now let's listen to another interesting fragment. Here we have a breath before the vocal line and a strong first consonant in the word try.
Try to start and never.
Sibalance handles both of these pretty well. Listen before and after.
Try to start and try.
Now let's look at the controls. The main control is the sibilance level. It simply decides how much the detected sibilant part are reduced. When you have delta, delta lets you hear only what the plugin removes. This is very useful because it tells you where the plugin is catching the right thing. If you start hearing too much of the normal voice in delta, the settings are probably too aggressive. Now edge. Then edge is all the way to the left. Sibalance focuses more strictly on sharp sibilance. As you turn edge to the right, the detector also starts catching harsher voiced material. This is not always a sibilant. It can be a raspy part of a vowel, a sharp beginning of the word, or some unpleasant edge in the voice. For example, in the first vocal fragment, edge also catches part of the loud Y sound in the word typical. Let's listen to delta. Here, sibilance works almost like a small compressor for sounds that jump out of the vocal. Not a full vocal compressor, only for the sharp, annoying moments. Next parameter, sensitivity. Sensitivity decides how easily the plugin reacts. At low values it reacts less often, at high values it catches more material, sometimes even too much. Usually I start with the default settings. When I adjust sensitivity, only if vocal is either too bright, too quiet, too compressed, or the detector is clearly missing something. Now smoothing. This controls how quickly the plugin reacts to sibilance. On the left side, tight, attack and release are shorter. On the right side, soft, they are longer and smoother. For fast speech, I usually keep it shorter. For longer sung vocals, a smoother settings can be better. Normal is a middle position, and it's safe starting point for most material. Now focus. Focus helps the plugin understand where to listen. Low can be useful for darker vocals, bright can be useful for very airy or sharp vocals. Natural is more balanced mode, and auto lets the algorithm adapt by itself. Again, I would start with auto. Only change it when the voice tells you to. Now let's try sibilance on spoken voice. The first example is very obvious. Listen without processing.
And such a goat, for just then she caught sight of Crookhorn.
There is a lot of whistling sibilance here, and there is also something background noise. I'm not going to fix everything. Let's focus only on the sibilance. Now I will enable my plugin. Listen again.
And such a goat, for just then she caught sight of Crookhorn. And such a, and such a, and such a, and such a.
Much better. The speech is still clear, but the sharp consonants are less painful. Now let's listen to delta.
And such a goat, just then she caught sight of.
Now let's listen to the second spoken example.
The blood forsook his cheeks, and he clasped his hands in agony.
And now with sibilance.
The blood forsook his cheeks, and he clasped his hands in agony. The blood forsook his cheeks, and forsook his cheeks, forsook his cheeks, and forsook his.
In this case, I like setting edge somewhere around 50 or 60%.
The blood forsook his cheeks, and he clasped his hands in forsook his cheeks, and he clasped his hands in agony. The blood forsook his cheeks, and he clasped his hands in agony. The blood forsook his cheeks, and he clasped his hands in agony. The blood forsook his cheeks, and he clasped his hands in agony. The blood forsook, clasped his.
And one more fragment from the same audiobook.
Well, sister, I dare say that he ought to have stopped to pick up your teaspoon. Well, sister, I dare say that he ought to have stopped to pick up your teaspoon. Well, sister, I dare say that he.
Here, edge also helps a lot. It slightly softens those sharp word attacks. This is the basic sibilance workflow. Start from default, adjust the amount, check delta, then touch edge, sensitivity, smoothing, or focus only if the material needs it. There are a few more practical things. Live mode reduced plugin latency to the minimum possible value. The trade-off is that sibilance detections become a little lighter, and the reaction is faster. So, in live mode, smoothing does not behave exactly the same way as in the normal mode. If I use live mode, I usually keep smoothing closer to tight. When we have presets, there are a few factory presets, and you can also save your own. At the moment, custom preset renaming is not available yet, but I plan to add it in a future version. There is also update checking. You can check for the new version without giving the plugin direct internet access. When you press the manual update button, it opens your browser. At the address line, you can see what information is being passed. Nothing personal. Only the plugin name, version, platform, and minimal technical information needed to show the correct update page. I'm recording this before the official release, so the page may look a little different here. In settings, you can enable automatic update checks. Optional checks are off by default, run weekly if you enable them, and send only minimal version and platform information, no telemetry. If an update is available, the plugin will show it with a small yellow warning icon. From the same settings menu, you can change UI scaling, switch between light and dark theme, and copy technical data if something does not work as expected. If you need support, press this button, paste the technical data, and describe what happened. When I can understand the problem much easier. Now let's move to VocRide. I'll leave sibilance on the tracks, where it makes sense, so the sharp consonants are already under control. VocRide is a different kind of tool. It is not a normal static EQ. A normal EQ works at fixed frequencies, but vocals move all the time. When a singer changes the note, the fundamental and the harmonics move with it. So if you boost or cut one static frequency, sometimes it helps. Sometimes it misses the problem, and sometimes it touches the wrong part of the voice. VocRide tracks the detected fundamental and moves the harmonic bands with the vocal. That means I can shape the fundamental, the second harmonic, the third harmonic, and an additional higher band in a way that follows the performance. But in a mix, the fundamental is often in a dangerous place. It can sit in the low mids, where you already have bass, piano, guitars, synths, reverb tails, or other instruments. This is the same kind of area I often talk about mixing. Roughly 100 to 400 Hz, sometimes up to 500, depending on the material. That range can give warmth and power. But when too many layers fight here, it quickly becomes mud. So with the vocal, the fundamental is not always something you want to boost. Sometimes the vocal becomes clearer, then you reduce the fundamental a little. Then you can bring up the second harmonic and sometimes a little bit of the third harmonic. This is related to the missing fundamental effect. Even if the actual fundamental becomes weaker, our ear can still understand the pitch from the harmonic structure. So the vocals can feel connected to the note, but it takes less space in the muddy low-mid area. Now let's listen to a few vocal examples. I will move the controls so you can hear what they do, and you can also see how the plugin follows the voice.
I see your shadows all around me. Am I crazy or am I in love with you? I see your shadows all around me. Am I crazy or am I in love with you? I see your shadow.
I got a feeling you're gonna break my heart. I got a feeling you're gonna break my heart. She didn't even hear it at first. She couldn't even process the word. She didn't even hear it at first. She
Try to start and never know where to begin. Fortune's for the bold. Try to start and never know where to begin.
Leaving the anchors far behind, riding the silver glow.
मेरे दिल के करीब रहो, ना रूठो, मुझसे बातें करो. मैं आशिक हूँ, दीवाना हूँ मेरे.
So I would not use the same settings. VocRide is not a preset machine. It's more like a harmonic balance tool. The controls are simple, but the right move depends on the voice, the note range and the arrangement. Sometimes the best settings is very small, sometimes it is more obvious, and sometimes the right answer is don't use it. That is also fine. The interesting thing is that VocRide can also work on speech. It was designed mainly for vocals, but speech also has speech and harmonic structure. It is less stable than singing, so I do not expect perfect musical tracking all the time, but on some voices it still works very well. Here is the spoken female voice.
And such a goat, for just then she caught sight of Crookhorn.
To my ear, This example could use a little more pleasant low body. That is basically the fundamental area. Now I'll enable VocRide and gently raise the fundamental. Listen before and after.
And such a goat, for just then she caught sight of Crookhorn. And such a goat, for just then she caught sight of Crookhorn. And such a goat, for just then she caught sight of Crookhorn. And such a goat, for just then she caught sight of Crookhorn.
It gives the voice more body and makes it more pleasant for an audiobook style sound. But again, carefully. If I add too much low harmonic energy, the voice becomes heavy or boomy and the clarity goes down. Now let's talk about AJC. AJC means automatic gain compensation. When you change harmonics, the loudness can change too. And louder almost always feel better in a quick A-B comparison. So AJC tries to keep the processed vocal closer to the original loudness. I will show this with extreme settings.
And such a goat, for just then she caught sight of Crookhorn. And such a goat, for just then she caught sight of Crookhorn. And such a goat, for just then she caught sight of Crookhorn.
The level becomes closer to original, so the comparison is more honest. But you still have to listen carefully. AJC is not magic. For example, if I boost the fundamental a lot, I may increase the amplitude and low frequency energy.
And such a goat, for just then she caught sight of Crookhorn. And such a goat, for just then.
The meter reacts strongly. AJC may turn the output down to compensate. And sometimes the vocal can feel less forward, even though technically I added something. That's it because low frequencies can take a lot of headroom without giving the same perceived clarity as upper harmonics. So with VocRide I always listen in context, not only in solo. VocRide also has an additional higher band. Depending on the voice, this can be useful in different ways. Sometimes I use it to control unpleasant areas somewhere around 3 to 7 kHz. Up to the 40th harmonic, it can be linked to the harmonic structure. After that, it becomes more like a normal parametric band. That is also useful, because sometimes you just need quick static EQ inside the same plugin. VocRide also has live mode. Latency becomes as low as possible for this kind of harmonic detection. The trade-off is that tracking can be a little less precise in different moments. But there is quite a lot of math inside trying to keep it useful and stable. If I put both plugins one after another in live mode, the total latency is around 3 milliseconds, so they can be used for live performance and real-time monitoring. VocRide also have presets, UI scaling, light and dark themes, update checks, and the same support for flow with technical data. So this is VocRide and Sibalance version 1.2.0. They are both free to download and free to use in commercial and non-commercial audio work. You can get them from my website, check the description for the links. If you find them useful, you can support the development with a donation, or just share them with someone who works with vocals. And if you want more videos about sound, mixing, plugins, and the thinking behind audio tools, please subscribe. That's it for today. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.